What's up, internet? This is going to be my last video of the year, I think. And today we're going to look at SoundFonts in VCV Rack, and specifically this little module here, the SFZ Player from Squinky Labs. As far as I know, it's the only SoundFont player in VCV. If there is another one, I don't know about it, and also this one's pretty great. For people who don't know, SoundFonts are basically sort of, I guess, very old style VST sort of thing. They're basically MIDI samplers, or they're the files from MIDI samplers. So a good example would be like the old General MIDI Roland sound canvas things and stuff like that. Old little hardware modules, and they were especially used a lot in old computer games, old PC games. You'd have like a General MIDI option a lot in those games, and they pretty much were just sound fonts. This is a sound font player, and what that means is that you can load in all different kinds of sound fonts, and there are so many out there for free download. And for the purposes of this video, I suppose, a lot of them are quite sort of video game specific. I'm a big fan of video games going back, God, probably to the late 80s. But the point is, though, is that I have a whole bunch of sound fonts downloaded, and specifically, I have ones from the Nintendo 64 and from the Super Nintendo. And loaded in here at the moment, I have an ocarina sound, which you might notice sounds very much, if not exactly, like the ocarina sound from The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. It's a pretty cool sound. This is also polyphonic if you want it to be. And it's also quite like lo-fi. Let's have a listen to a few others before I show some other examples. So there's so many here. Let's try the Koto. And the cool thing about this is it really reminds me of old like romplers from back in the day. Things like the Korg M1 or the Roland D50, and any of the numerous ones that came after that, like the Triton, Trinity, all of that shit. The cool thing about these is because they're basically sample players, and because VCV, you can just do so much. You can layer these and play them in different ways so that you can pretty much treat them like partials. And if anybody's familiar with partials, definitely a thing that existed like on the D50. And it's basically a tiny like fragment of a sound that you then use multiple of them to build up a larger sound. So you might have like a looping partial, and then you might have a transient partial, and then like a release partial or something. And all together you get an interesting sound. And you can totally do that with this because you can have multiple instances of the SFZ player. And of course, you know, VCV, you can just do anything. Lots of fun can be had there. But I just like the fact that in VCV, I can just have access to all of these old school sounds from my childhood, really. And obviously they sound a little bit tinny, a bit shit, but that's kind of the point. And also, if I plug in this LFO here, I've got it on a really low scale setting. This Bog Audio LFO allows me to adjust the scale on the module itself, which is actually really handy. It means I don't have to have like a VCA external from it. Cool feature. And I've got this on a really low amount, but you can hear it just warbling. And it sort of has this lo-fi quality to it. Why don't we add a little bit of reverb to it, just to give ourselves, I don't know, just a little bit of niceness, you know? So let's try another one. And then we'll move on to some other stuff. But we got like a bunch of pads here. And like this is a great sound if you want to ramp up this. You may have noticed I have a few other modules here. This is an envelope from, what is this company? 3HR. I haven't really ever used these before, but this is pretty cool because you've got 2 envelopes in one module. Pretty full featured as well. You got like inverted outputs and stuff as well. Very cool. The thing is though, you may have also noticed that I've just got the SFZ Player, just a gate input right on it. And you don't have any release controls or anything like that. So it's just kind of got like a harsh release on it. Obviously there's a reverb, so we get a bit more of a tail. And it doesn't just cut off, but like it's not a long release. And what if I wanted a long release? That's where this polygate mod comes in, because it means if we hook this up to here and then we go in here, I've got it set up so that now the gate will be much longer. And then if we plug this in over here to our VCA, we will now have a long release because I've got a long release set here, but it means that basically what's happening is the gate is being modified, so the length of the gate is much longer. So you can see it with the lights here. If I hit this, the gate stays on for much longer. And what that means is that I can have I have room to have a release, if that makes sense. Because the sound goes for longer, it goes into the VCA, it still stays in the VCA, but then the envelope controls it and fades it out while it's still playing. It took me a little while to get this set up and to get it set up how I wanted it to. I had a lot of issues with it originally, but with this gate mod, polygate mod specifically, if you're doing polyphonic stuff, and an envelope and a VCA, we can have a long decay, which is really cool for these sounds. All right, so like I said, so many sounds here. I've got heaps. They're all pretty different. I don't know, like let's try this steel guitar. That's pretty lovely, honestly. Almost sounds like a harp. So I think that's really nice. So I have a few examples here. This one down here we'll start with. I've got 4 SVZ players. They're going into a percol, which is a really great, usually for percussive stuff, but it's a really great little like attack decay. Basically just a decay, really. Like there's no attack option. It's always hard attack and then a bit of a decay. So that's why it's good for percussion. That's why it's called percol, at least I assume. And you've got 4 inputs, 4 decays, and you can control and you can trigger them individually. I'm triggering them all with this Cockmock trigger sequencer. I've got 4 ADDR sequences, and so basically, because they're all being triggered at the same time, you're effectively getting chords. I've set these up so they're all different sounds. Got it going through a filter. Let's just listen to it. Why am I waiting? Let's just try it. I really like this sound. I've got it debritus here so we can crush it. Or distort it. I kind of like this little repeating sequence. And up here I have a lead instrument, which is very much like the original patch we were looking at, except for I've added a few elements to it. So I've added this Super VCA from Cortenja. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Cortenja DSP. And what this is a Super VCA, which is a Super Nintendo filter, effectively. How do they describe it? An emulation of the Gaussian interpolation filter effect from the S-SMP chip on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It does have an interesting quality to it. It's barely a filter. It's not really a filter. It's kind of probably got more in common with, at least in terms of sound, with like a low-pass gate, maybe. But then also over here from the same developer, there's Super Echo, which is Super Nintendo Echo. Got a bit of a chorus, a bit of a bit crushing, more debriatus. Let's have a listen to what that sounds like. Let's give it a bit of reverb, because at the moment there's no effects on it besides this Super Echo and chorus. I guess the bit crusher as well. Let's add a little bit of reverb. I don't know, I just really like this like lo-fi sound. And it's also a sound that is just super old school, like really vintage kind of general MIDI sound. In here I have a sort of flute sound, but like I said, so many different sounds to choose from. Let's try a different one. Let's try string ensemble too. It's a beautiful sound. All of these have been from the Nintendo 64 pack that I found online. There's also this other SoundFont pack here, which very similar, honestly. But I think this one is from an old General MIDI device. And then, of course, there's the Super Nintendo one. I do find the Super Nintendo one to be a bit glitchy sometimes. Let's try one, though. And it's more of an effect. Let's try some other ones. Pad, polysynth. Yeah, you get like a sort of fuzziness to it, and that's probably because of like a low bit rate. But I kind of like that. And if we dial down the filter a bit, which I've got this filter again from 3HR, pretty interesting sounding filter. It's quite, I don't know, quite slight, I will say. And I know that I've got the bit crusher on, but if I bring that all the way up, you still get that, like, kind of low bit rate sound. Pretty cool sounds. Down here I have one more example, which is a jazz guitar and a new age pad. And let's just listen to what they sound like, because it's basically doing a bass sound. Why don't we unmute this one as well? So I think that's probably going to do it for this video. I really love the SFZ Player. Definitely check it out. Lots of fun can be had. So many sound fonts online to download for free. And especially if you do like kind of, I don't know, vintage video game music, like Super Nintendo style music, or maybe it's not the best for chiptune because I feel like chiptune is more related to like the NES, the Game Boy, and the Genesis or the Mega Drive in terms of synthesis, like FM synthesis. But this is more sample based. But Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, PlayStation, they were all using sample based PCM style synthesis. And also it's just like a sound of that era, the 90s and the late 80s. Alright, that's it. Happy holidays and all of that stuff, I suppose. I hope you have fun celebrating with your families or whoever you like to celebrate with. And I will see you either next week or in the new year. We will see. Okay, bye.